But you can just...
just هيك.
No, not here. Not here. Here.
Okay, هدول. Go back, you're spoiling.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna show. Okay, there's the...
Okay, how do I turn it on? It's on? Can you hear me?
Yes. Perfect.
So, imagine trying to breathe through a filter, slowly and steadily. It's not easy, but it's possible. Now imagine someone suddenly clogging that filter. That's what happened to Beddawi camp. Beddawi camp has long survived through what I like to call through this presentation porosity, which is the informal, flexible, and adaptive ways that we, Palestinian refugees, use to survive in a system that structurally and legally restricts us. But in April, this porosity was suddenly clogged when the informal entrances that we relied on for years were suddenly closed. In this presentation, I want to take you through what that actually means. Not just through diagrams and numbers, but in how it's actually affecting our livelihoods and our dignity. My name is Amar Khattab. I'm a Palestinian refugee from Beddawi camp.
Very nice introduction.
I know. So my presentation consists of two parts, the porosity and the clogging. And in each section, I will discuss the implications of the economic, mobility, and social cohesion aspects. Then I will move to my intervention. In Lebanon, Palestinian refugees like me are banned from working in most professions. We can't be doctors, we can't be lawyers, we can't be engineers. And we are also not allowed to own property. And this is because Lebanon is not a signatory of the 1951 Geneva Convention that grants refugees their rights. So you can say that we are doomed to be poor. So how do we survive? We create informal systems. Most men in my community do informal labor, such as construction or daily labor. Others have established small businesses within the camp, such as grocery, food businesses, or something else. And there's also the employment enhancement programs, such as the Cash for Work program by UNRWA. Our camp has two formal entrances. And a formal entrance is the one that has a checkpoint of Palestinian factions. And there are also 22 informal entrances, and an informal entrance is the pedestrian alleys that has no checkpoint. Our camp has moved beyond its physical limits because it had to. It covers an area of 1 kilometer, yet it has almost 30,000 people inside the camp. So many Palestinian people don't live just inside the camp, they live also in the neighboring areas, like Wadi Nahle, Mankubin, and Beddawi. But still they rely on the camp. They send their children to UNRWA schools inside the camp because it offers free education. They go to the UNRWA clinics inside the camp because they can't afford private doctors. They shop in the camp's markets because prices are cheaper inside the camp and the vendors are our neighbors, and they socialize with their relatives and friends. Now, because we kind of live in a specific place and we have our own facilities like schools and clinics that we don't share with Lebanese people, we're kind of excluded from the host community. And some of us even try to speak the Lebanese dialect when outside the camp just to fit in. So we communicate mostly among each others. And to do all of that, to go to school, to go to work, to socialize, we use the informal entrances, which are shortcuts that are supposed to make the flow of life easier. But in April, this flow was interrupted when the Lebanese army started sealing the camp's informal entrances. Authorities said that this was about disarmament of non-state actors, including the armed Palestinian factions, in a broader effort to reassert state's authority over all Lebanese land. But in fact, it criminalized our survival strategies. The very informality that helped us survive statelessness for over 77 years was branded as a threat and choked off. In seeking to secure the camp, they increased insecurity and deepened poverty. So here, this is falafel al-Susi. It's close to where I live and where I used to buy the most delicious falafel sandwich from. To go to falafel al-Susi, you take this informal entrance, which is Bawabat Fatma. However, after closing Bawabat Fatma, a few days later, falafel al-Susi closed its shop. and the whole family lost their jobs and their incomes. This is Shara Abu al-Fawz, or Abu al-Fawz Street, where I also used to shop for everything, for clothes, for groceries, for food, for anything. And also we used to go there using Bawabat Fatma. But after closing Bawabat Fatma, many people started losing their customers and their incomes. Here we can see what the people think.
هلا بالنسبة للمتعلم من زمان هاي على طول ما في شغل، وبالنسبة للشباب اللي ما متعلمة كذلك الأمر، وقفلوا لنا مداخل المخيم، يعني الواحد لا بيقدر يلاقي شغل.
حرفيا المحل عندي نص زبايني من وادي النحلي، يعني اغلب وادي النحلي ما بتحب تقطع مشوار كثير كبير، بتيجي بتعبي من عندي من هون. هلا ضرر عليهم بصيروا يروحوا مشوار كثير بعيد، وضرر علينا نحن اقتصاديا بده ينقتل المحل.
Okay, so the impact is not only on income generation. The impact goes way deeper into our ability to move, to even do the simplest daily tasks with dignity. These pictures are from our camp. The camp structure is mainly made of very tiny and narrow alleys. We can barely move inside those alleys, so we can definitely get any cars in there. Cars can barely move inside the streets of the camp. So considering that structure, we definitely rely on walking to access everything. And considering that, we definitely don't have any parking spaces inside the camp. So we use parking spaces outside the camp. Here on the map, you can see my home. This is where I live. And there's an informal entrance, which allows us to go to the parking. It's 200 meters from my home to the closest parking. However, now after closing that entrance, the distance is 1.17 kilometers, and we need to do this walking. Something more critical is accessing the hospital. After the distance was 0.4 kilometers to access the hospital, then they closed the informal entrance that allows us to go from the camp to the hospital. The distance became 1.5 kilometers. And keep in mind, this is people's life at stake in this case. This closure is also impacting children's ability to access school. As I mentioned, children in neighboring areas still go to UNRWA schools inside the camp. And they usually do that walking because first, the distance is short using the informal entrances, and second, because their parents cannot afford transportation costs to send them to school. Now, something that you might think is silly, but it's an actual problem. What if taket de janter? In Lebanon, we say taket de janter when the electricity cuts, and it actually literally means the circuit breaker just flipped due to an overload. And it's usually a simple act. You just go to the circuit breaker, you flip it back on, and the electricity goes back. But in this case, they close the entrance that allows people to go to the circuit breaker and flip it back on. And this usually happens so many times per day. So can you imagine what it would be like to take a long way to flip the circuit breaker? After being just communicating with Palestinians from the camp or in surrounding areas, now even this communication has been disrupted because walls were built between us and our families. This closure is leading to anxiety among the people in the camp. I asked people in my community what do they think of the closure, and this woman explained everything. After she used to visit her family every day, and it took her 1 minute walking distance to see her family, now that walls were built between her and her family, she can no longer see them as she used to. And she no longer feels safe or reassured to send her children to school after the distance was just 200 meters. It's now around 2 kilometers. The anxiety doesn't stop at the level of people. This is creating tensions between us and the Palestinian factions that are supposed to represent us in the camps. After the closure, this was written on the street of the camp, تسقط السلطة, or down with the authorities. Because the people are blaming the factions for taking such a decision or agreeing on such a decision without even consulting with the people. So, it seems like the crisis beneath it all is a crisis of trust, where on one hand we have mutual distrust, where the Lebanese army views the camps as security threat, and the Palestinian people view the state as oppressive and unaccountable. And on the other hand, there's internal distrust, where the camp residents feel underrepresented and unheard by the Palestinian factions. Here comes my intervention, which is to establish an Emergency Response Dialogue Committee, or ERDC, which aims to build trust and facilitate dialogue between the camp residents among themselves, camp residents and the Palestinian factions, camp residents and the Lebanese army. So the goal is not just to do one ERDC for Beddawi camp, which would be ERDC BC. The vision is for every camp in Lebanon to have its own ERDC, which is a local structure that knows about the context of each camp, the challenges of each camp, and could represent and channel the voices of the people in the camp. So to implement ERDC, the vision is for camp residents to do an election where they're gonna choose representatives who are independent community members, such as educators, NGO representatives, or people from healthcare, or just simply people who are they are present in our community, who are just listen to people, try to solve their problems. And it should also include women. So to sum it up, ERDC is represented by independent civil actors who are willing to solve the camp's problems through facilitating dialogue. So finally, ERDC is from the camp, for the camp, by the camp. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay,
Any
we have-
questions?